If you have an iPhone 16 Pro, you probably shouldn't upgrade to the iPhone 17 Pro, unless you really want the following features. Vapor chamber cooling, slightly better battery life, new front-facing camera, the 4x telephoto zoom, ProRes RAW, open gate, gen lock, scratches if you use your phone without a case, or the bragging rights the new design might get you. Generally, you shouldn't upgrade. But if you want a more in-depth comparison, well, that's what the rest of this video is for. I'll be mainly comparing the 17 Pro to last year's 16 Pro, and you might be thinking, well, that's a very impractical comparison. Most people with a 16 Pro aren't considering the 17 Pro, and that's true. But I'm doing this comparison anyways because we're all familiar with the 16 Pro, its features, its limitations, and it'll serve as a standard point of comparison against the 17 Pro. Also, one thing to note, I'm going from the regular sized iPhone 16 Pro to the larger iPhone 17 Pro Max. But this comparison video should apply to all 16 Pro and 17 Pro models, regardless of size, because the only difference in specs between the two sizes is screen size, weight, and battery life. Everything else is generally the same. Alright, let's get started. So first off, build quality and hardware. I'm gonna go out and say it, I like the 16 Pro's feel in the hand more. It feels like a piece of jewelry with the polished titanium edges and glass front and back. It's sexy. This year, that sexiness is embodied in the iPhone Air, which frees up the Pro lineup of models to become more rugged and practical, and that's what they did with the aluminum unibody design. The 17 Pro's unibody wraps around the edges of the phone to go around the camera bump, with a glass cutout for wireless charging and MagSafe. I like the design of this phone too, honestly, it's a very refreshing change compared to the camera square we've had since 2019. It's beautiful, but not in a way any other Pro phone is beautiful. The aluminum unibody is very comfortable and soft to hold. It feels more rounded than the 16 Pro, however it also feels a lot more slippery. The 16 Pro's titanium edges offered some nice grip in comparison. In terms of glass technology, the iPhone 17 Pro has Ceramic Shield 2 on the front, as well as Ceramic Shield on the back glass, whereas the iPhone 16 Pro just has regular old glass on the back and Ceramic Shield on the front. Based on Jerry Rig Everything's testing, the new Ceramic Shield does provide quite a bit of extra scratch resistance, which is always welcome, although I always put a screen protector on my phone as soon as possible anyways. But now let's talk about the controversial switch from titanium to aluminum. Titanium was literally the main marketing feature for the 15 Pro 2 years ago, and now it's just been kind of kicked to the curb. Apple cited that aluminum was better for heat transfer, which is true. Aluminum has a much better thermal conductivity than titanium, and paired with the 17 Pro's new vapor chamber, it should result in much better thermal performance overall for the phone, which we'll talk about later. As for durability, that depends on how you define durability. If you dropped an iPhone 16 Pro or any recent iPhone with a glass back, there was a chance it would crack because glass is glass and glass breaks, which sucks, and you'd have to pay a lot of money to get it replaced if you didn't have AppleCare Plus. If you drop an iPhone 17 Pro, the chances of the back glass breaking is significantly lower because of that aluminum unibody, and the glass section on the back has been reduced to a little charging pad. So if you define a durable phone as a phone that won't crack, then yes, the 17 Pro is more durable. But I'm sure you've heard of Scratchgate at this point, which is the controversy of the iPhone's anodized aluminum coming off due to scratches from like keys and stuff. Personally, I think this has been a little overblown because literally putting a decent case on the phone will help with this. Will putting a case on impact thermal performance? Probably a bit, but I feel like it's worth it to keep scratches away from the phone, and I'll go more in depth about thermals in a bit. But something that does concern me is the aluminum frame softness. Aluminum is much softer than the titanium or stainless steel we've seen on previous Pro models, and it dents way easier too. For this one, it's a bit harder to use the put a case on it argument, since people have noticed that even with a case sometimes, their phones are denting. I suspect this is because they're using a thinner case or something. Another thing I'm worried about is the camera plateau. What if you drop the phone and the plateau gets all dinged up? And let's talk about AppleCare Plus here. Back then, arguably the most likely damage to happen to your phone would be cracking the iPhone glass, whether that's front or back. If you had AppleCare Plus, a replacement was relatively straightforward. Now, with the 17 Pro series, the glass is a lot stronger, but any dents and dings on the aluminum frame won't be covered under AppleCare Plus as long as it doesn't affect functionality, because AppleCare Plus does not cover cosmetic damage. So in terms of withstanding cosmetic damage, I'd say the 17 Pro is less durable. But I don't have to worry about that since I keep my phone in a case all the time, like this ESR Classic Hybrid case. With the Classic Hybrid magnetic case, I don't have to worry about scratches in places like the camera plateau, since the case covers the camera bar and there's a zinc alloy camera guard. There's a built-in camera control cover, air guard corners, and some nice raised edges all around the case. I can do that because the case has 11-foot drop protection. The zinc alloy guard I mentioned earlier is actually ESR's stash stand, so you can prop your phone up in portrait or landscape mode. and I really like the design of this case. There's a bunch of different colors like frosted black, frosted blue, frosted green, clear black, and clear. Unlike Apple's clear cases, these cases actually show the color of the phone. The MagSafe magnets are also incredibly strong. If you abuse your phone regularly, then check out the CyberTough magnetic case. It's got the same cool coverage and stash stand as the classic hybrid cases, but with some added bulk and a 3-layer design for a solid build and 23-foot drop protection. But what about the screen? The ESR's got you covered there too. Literally. The UltraFit Armorite Pro screen protectors are made from Corning accessory glass, which is actually the same Corning that makes the glass on your iPhone, so it's really strong. ESR says it's 10 times the impact absorption of generic protectors, and it's got up to 2 times better scratch resistance. But my favorite thing about the UltraFit Armorite Pro protectors is just how easy they are to apply. It's really quick and easy with a 2-step application that doesn't have dust or bubbles. It only takes a few seconds to set up, and then I can just put my phone in, pull the tab, and then there we go. And some added bonuses, these UltraFit screen protectors have an anti-reflective coating to reduce glare, and they offer edge-to-edge protection for maximum shielding. Each package also comes with 3 protectors, so you're protected for a long time. So don't wait to protect your phone before something like this happens. Check out ESR's cases in the description and comment section below, and now back to the video. This is also a good time to talk about the speakers. There's not a huge difference. The 16 Pro had solid speakers, but the 17 Pro does have a much wider earpiece. I'm not an audiophile, but the 17 Pro does feel like it has more bass. It's a bit louder and a bit fuller, if that makes sense. It's nice and clear. That might just be because I'm comparing a Pro Max to a regular Pro, but yeah, the speakers are decently improved. Here's a sound test, by the way. Now, let's talk about the thing you stare at the most. The screen! There's a couple of upgrades worth noting here. In terms of screen size, they're unchanged. Both the 17 Pro and the 16 Pro have 6.3-inch and 6.9-inch options for the display. I miss when they had the 6.7-inch option. Sick! Both have dynamic island, always on display, ProMotion of course. Both have the same 1000 nit max brightness, 16,000 nits peak brightness with HDR, and 1 nit of minimum brightness. However, the iPhone 17 Pro series has a peak brightness of up to 3000 nits outdoors, whereas the 16 Pro only has a peak brightness of 2000 nits outdoors. So that's a pretty decent jump. This brighter screen is nice. The 16 Pro was fine, but sometimes it would dim the screen because it got too hot, whereas the 17 Pro so far, I don't think it's done that. I don't think I've had many issues with the phone brightness. Of course, this also has to do with the phone's thermals. The 17 Pro has a vapor chamber, whereas the 16 Pro does not. This is also a little bit biased because the 16 Pro I used a lot in the summer, where it's hot, whereas so far I've been using the iPhone 17 Pro mostly in the fall. There's also Apple's new Ceramic Shield 2 on the iPhone 17 Pro. Apple claims this has 3 times better scratch resistance, and Jerry Rig Everything confirmed that this was the case in his testing. As for performance, the big theme this year seems to be heat management, manifesting itself in the switch to aluminum and the addition of a vapor chamber. And honestly, I feel a difference. Back then with the 16 Pro, the phone would get hot after extended use and throttle performance. If I was on like FaceTime or something for example and doing something else, it would get really toasty. Oh, now I want food. But on the 17 Pro Max, even when I'm on like FaceTime, charging and doing other stuff, the phone gets warm but not uncomfortably hot like the 16 Pros did. The one thing I can think of that made the phone hot was today when I was using the phone as a hotspot for my iPad. This was for like an hour or two, and it drained the battery and it made the phone quite hot. The vapor chamber seems to spread the heat out more evenly, with the only hotspot I felt being the camera plateau. And you know how sometimes when you're using your phone in the sun, it lowers the maximum brightness all of a sudden? That's the throttling kicking in because the phone is getting hotter. The 16 Pro did that a lot, but so far I haven't had an issue with the lower screen brightness kicking in on the 17 Pro Max more than a few times. Huh? The switch from titanium to aluminum is objectively better for thermal performance, but again, the durability issues are making me curious if Apple will stick with this material and design. And let's be honest, aluminum is way cheaper than titanium, so. But yeah, the 17 Pro comes with 12 gigs of RAM compared to 8 on the 16 Pro. Sometimes I'll open an app and it'll be where I left off a day or two ago, and it's honestly really impressive. That being said, the 16 Pro is still very snappy. It's still got very high-end performance with its 8 gigs of RAM, and generally there isn't a significant difference in performance. Maybe this will change a few years down the line, but for now, it's generally the same. Also, all 17 Pro models now start at 256 gigabytes of storage, whereas with the 16 series, only the Pro Max started at 256 gigs, the regular Pro started at 128 gigs. Finally, if some of you have been having issues with like calls dropping and stuff and are wondering about the new C1X modem, I want to clarify that that's available on the iPhone Air. It's not on this year's Pro. I was a bit confused too at first. I thought the Pro models had them, but nope, these are still using Qualcomm modems. Now let's talk about battery life and charging. I can't really compare these two directly since I'm going from a 16 Pro to a 17 Pro Max, but as someone going from a smaller phone to a bigger phone, the battery upgrade is insane. If you're considering going from a regular sized iPhone to a Max model, know that you're jumping into an entirely new class of battery life. Like on a normal day, I cannot drain the battery to empty on my 17 Pro Max. 8:51 and the phone is dead. Bruh. It's 10:50 right now and we are at 7%. Charging is also fine. Apple says the 17 Pro has faster charging via MagSafe than the 16 Pro, and I haven't felt that the iPhone 17 Pro Max charges slowly in my day-to-day use. That being said, charging speed is also really dependent on the type of charger you're using, its wattage, the temperature your phone is at, etc. Me personally, I use an ESR 50-watt charging stand, and my 17 Pro Max was able to charge from 10% to 54% in 30 minutes. So yeah, I'm not complaining. I do think the 17 Pro's battery will age a lot better though, thanks to its improved heat management, because heat is terrible for battery aging. So yeah, I'm really sorry I'm not able to compare battery life and charging speeds across these phones due to their size, but something I can compare is the cameras. Again, for the average person, these upgrades are mostly incremental. Apple did add a bunch of pro features this year, like ProRes RAW, which allows for higher quality, less compressed video recording, as well as OpenGate, which lets you use the full camera sensor, and Genlock, which lets you sync multiple iPhones recording together. There are, I'd say, 2 new features worth noting that almost anyone can appreciate though, and that's the new telephoto system, as well as the front-facing camera upgrade. Telephoto system first. Apple changed their 12 megapixel 5x telephoto on the 16 Pro to a 48 megapixel 4x telephoto on the 17 Pro. So they upped the quality, but they lowered the range. You might be thinking, that's kind of a downgrade, no? It zooms in less. I feel like it's generally an improvement since the 5x sometimes felt a bit too zoomed in, and there was an awkward gap in quality between the 1x and 2x zoom and the 5x zoom. Now on the 17 Pro, the zoom range is a bit cleaner. You're kind of doubling the zoom reach each time. You have 0.5x, 1x, 2x, 4x, and finally 8x. Let's talk about the 8x. On the 16 Pro and also the 17 Pro, the 2x button is not actually a separate 2x lens. It's cropping the 48 megapixel image from the 1x sensor to get a 12 megapixel image that's technically cropped in 2 times. So Apple claims it's optical quality since there's not really a drop in resolution, but it's not an actual optical sensor. The same goes for the 8x zoom. It's just the 48 megapixel 4x lens cropped into 12 megapixel at 8x. And it is more than just a crop because Apple does a bit of processing to make it look nice, but at the end of the day, it's not an actual physical 8x sensor. The 48 megapixel zoom lens is honestly pretty awesome though, because you're getting a crazy zoom range on these phones, up to 40 times digital zoom for photos, and it's made reading things from far away quite easier too, like in lectures and stuff. Overall, it's really nice to have all 3 sensors on the Pro iPhone finally be the same megapixel count. Next up, that front-facing selfie camera. Oh boy, let's talk about that camera. This thing is pretty awesome because it's now a square 18 megapixel sensor compared to the regular old 12 megapixel sensor on the 16 Pro. So you can take portrait and landscape selfies regardless of how you're holding the phone. So you can take a horizontal selfie while holding your phone vertically and vice versa. You can also have an ultra zoomed out view and also the option to have the front camera dynamically adjust based on how many people you have in the shot. This just adds a lot more flexibility to the front camera, and it's something I hope other manufacturers adopt as well. I should mention that the dynamic zooming features and stuff aren't available in video mode, although you are still able to pick the aspect ratio you want to record your video in. You can see this in action in my iPhone 17 Pro Max day in the life vlog. One more neat camera feature is dual capture, which lets you capture videos from the front and rear cameras simultaneously. This might be useful if you're like recording your kid's soccer practice or something and want to capture your reaction as well, but I kind of feel like this could have been done on the 16 Pro and other iPhones as well using some software magic. After all, Samsung was able to do it many years ago. Overall, the camera has received a few refinements. I won't go too much into detail since this isn't a camera review, but there seems to be improvements across the board. I'll have some photo samples for you to see on the screen here. Starting off with the macro mode, which takes close-ups using the phone's ultra-wide camera, you'd be forgiven if you thought all of these were from the same camera. Things get interesting once you look at the zooms here. The ultra-wide, main, and 2x photos look similar across the phones, but at 4x zoom, the 17 Pro is using its optical telephoto sensor, while the 16 Pro is still digitally zooming in from the 48 megapixel 1x sensor. At 5x, the 16 Pro's optical telephoto lens kicks in, while the 5x on the 17 Pro is the 48 megapixel sensor digitally zoomed in. Here's 8x, where the 17 Pro should still be able to produce an optical quality 12 megapixel image. You can see more detail and less noise in the trees in the background compared to the 16 Pro, which still looks pretty decent. Here's both phones at 25 times zoom, which is the maximum that the 16 Pro can zoom in, and here's the 17 Pro's 40 times maximum zoom compared to the 16 Pro's 25 times. For low light, it's a similar story. 0.5x, 1x, and 2x look about the same between both phones. Unfortunately, the lens flare that shows up in low light when dealing with light sources is still present on the 17 Pro. You can see these little dots. Here we have both of the phones at their optical telephoto lens, which is 5x zoom on the 16 Pro and 4x zoom on the 17 Pro. Finally, we have the maximum zoom for both phones in photo mode and low light, 25 times on the 16 Pro and 40 times on the 17 Pro. The 17 Pro's image does look quite a bit better, it's less murky and noisy, but Apple's image processing trying to fill in the text still looks kind of wonky. So I'm going to show you guys the maximum zoom for the iPhone 17 Pro Max for video. So this is the 0.5 camera right now. That's the 1x camera, the 2x camera, 4x camera, 8x camera, and then all the way to 24x, and then back to 0.5. That's pretty impressive. Here's some more 17 Pro camera samples. This one was shot using the 8x sensor, this one of the sky is using the 1x main sensor, and here's one taken with the 4x telephoto sensor. You're getting some nice bokeh in the background. That's real bokeh you're seeing there, which is pretty impressive. This is a sample of the iPhone 17's dual capture feature. I can just whip my little self across the screen like that. It's pretty cool. This is the iPhone 16 Pro's front camera and microphone. Bingo bongle dingle dangle, yippity too, yippity ta, ping pong lippy tappy too ta. And this is the iPhone 17 Pro Max's front camera with the default microphone. Bingo bongle dingle dangle, yippity too, yippity ta, ping pong lippy tappy too ta. Shrek! Alright, so that's the comparison between the 17 Pro and the 16 Pro. Generally, while the 17 Pro is better than the 16 Pro, you don't need to upgrade. There's always going to be something new, something better about the new models. The key is to wait long enough where these little upgrades add up to something meaningful. And then if you have a 16 Pro that you upgrade 3 to 4 years down the line, maybe even like 6 or 7 years, then you'll get something substantial. Generally, I don't think you should upgrade your phone until it stops working for you. When you feel like it's actively holding you back, if it's got like really bad battery life or a very limited camera, for example. That being said, if you're coming from like an iPhone 14 Pro or anything older, you'll feel some substantial upgrades going from that phone to the 17 Pro or Pro Max. You're getting USB-C, action button, camera control, baby dynamic island and ProMotion, brighter displays, much better cameras, but again, if you have no problems with your current phone, there's much better ways to spend your money. Think about all the toast you can buy with that money instead of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. So I'm gonna leave you with a bit of homework. Ask yourself, what do I need out of a phone? How well does my current phone meet those needs? And is there anything on the new phones that I know I'll take advantage of? Alright, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what phone you're using right now and if you'll be upgrading anytime soon. I'll be making loads more iPhone 17 content, so be sure to stay tuned by subscribing. Thanks for watching, and thank you to ESR for sponsoring this video. Be awesome and stay techie. Bye! Away from the phone. Oi! Who's gonna win the world championship? Who's gonna win the world championship? Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda. Ferrari got knocked back. Accurate. This magnet is actually impressively strong. Oopsies! Whoa! La 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 la! I'm not an audiophile, but the 19... Why did I say 19?